Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪. Major General Rajiv Narayanan retired is back with us, and we want to take a look at the global politics from a totally different lens. Suddenly, we all are beginning to hear this word called Global South. What exactly is the Global South? And India is increasingly becoming the voice of this Global South. And what is it that it has accomplished? What has it set itself as its goal? And where did it all begin? Let's hear from the good General. General Rajiv, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram, sir. Thank you. A pleasure to be back again on your panel, sir, and on your platform. It's always an honor.
General Rajiv, you have set expectations so high for our viewers. I'm sure you're going to exceed them today, sir. Walk us back a little bit about this concept of Global South. When did it start? Was it something like the extension of non-aligned movement? I leave it to you as to how far back you want to travel in time to start explaining how this phenomenon has arisen and how India is increasingly seen as the voice of the Global South. Take it away, sir.
Yeah. It is nothing but the old term during the post the war they used to call the colonies which had become freed. They were very underdeveloped, obviously, because all their resources and everything had been poached for the Western nations. They had used the term Third World. For themselves, they kept the world name as the First World. And then slowly by the 90s, I would say, they realized that the Third World is a rather deprecating term. So they now, actually, Brandt had made this line on the global map as Global South. And then they started this word and it's gained traction as Global South. It is nothing. It is basically the least or the underdeveloped or the developing countries have all been clubbed together. And almost about 140 to 150 countries fall in this category. For the West, China is still Global South. But for China, it is loath to call itself Global South. It feels that it is a risen power, not a rising power. And it has always talked of G2. The anomaly here is that the Global South holds 85% of the world's population, but accounts for only 20% of the global economy or the GDP. So you can realize, and within that, if you look at, if they are keeping China and India also within that, you can realize the what is the problem with the rest of the Global South if you remove India and China from there. How badly hit they are. And essentially, which is not surprising, they cover Africa, Asia, Oceania, Latin America, and the Caribbean, which were the colonies of the US West. So the only countries in Asia and Oceania which are not part of it, you can say, Australia, New Zealand, you have Japan, you have South Korea, and you have Saudi Arabia, which has a lot of money from its oil. But now there is a major, you could say, churning taking place in the global order. I always talk of Kindleberger trap. Kindleberger was an economist, US economist, who had worked with the others and worked out the details of the Marshall Plan. Assessing the global recession in a post between the two wars, he had spoken about an economic trap. He said it's a global Kindleberger trap. In his name, it was called. It's that the leading economic giant of that time did not provide for the global commons. And for him, he says that was the biggest mistake that America did. America, post the war, had come up as the main power and all the others were bleeding. Today, it's the similar sort of a situation. But there is no leading power at the moment. See, the Americans and the West are facing a tremendous economic hit due to the Ukraine war. China has already taken a very bad hit economically because of Xi Jinping's policies and has been hit with COVID and his zero COVID policy and everything. Who's this power who's going to provide for the global commons? And this is where I say India comes in. Why? Because of what India did during COVID and now during the Ukraine war. Two things. India provided vaccines which the UN also was not able to provide. Almost equal amount of vaccine India provided as what UN was attempting to provide through their COVAX and CEPI and Gavi and all those initiatives. Almost about 20 million India, 38 million India has given gratis to all these countries. Whereas the West and everybody hoarded all the vaccines, would not give. Our own opposition and a lot of media was shouting when the government was giving. What they failed to understand, may have understood, but was a narrative they may have taken, is that a vaccine, when it is made, has a life. Similarly, a vaccine shot has 10 vaccines in that. If you give it in a vial, it has 10 shots available in that. Once you open that vial, you have to give to those 10 people, otherwise it goes bad. You have X amount of health workers, so the health workers can only give you that many number of vaccines over a period of time. So whatever was surplus because of lack of capacity to provide the vaccines was the ones which we gave, while there have been shots on social media, West dumping these vaccines whose life was over into the gutter. Now see the contrast when the global South watches that India gives you and there they are not giving you. Then comes Chinese, of course, they tried it, but their vaccine and everything was a failure, so the countries refused to accept it. When you come to Ukraine, Ukraine and Russia are the largest wheat suppliers. India commenced supplying wheat, but then they kept a close track of that. And in April last year, they stopped putting out wheat in the open market because they said that they found that a lot of these countries who were richer were buying it and hoarding it, so that the price increases and then they will resell it to the other countries. So the wheat was not reaching to the affected people. So India then, to all these, a lot of these global South countries became direct government to government. India sent them the wheat, and this they have not forgotten. And because India, when it was asked, they said we follow the foreign policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And this incidentally is also the theme for G20. And G20 was made to look after all these things, which for some reason last 2-3 G20s they have gone off on a tangent. So the Indians are wanting to bring this back, and for that you called all these countries and said that, okay, we will be the voice, you tell us what you want, we are the president of G20, we'll take it forward. Of the 140 odd, what would have shocked the world was 123 attended. 3, of course, sent. The head of the government was not able to come, so they sent their representatives, but 123, which means so the 190 odd countries, if 123 countries are accepting you as their leader, it shakes up the global order. It shakes up the global order. And the evidence was there in last year's UNGA, late last year UN General Assembly speech, when Guyana and Jamaica said India is the multinational institution for them because they provided what the UN could not provide.
General Rajiv, if I could just interrupt, sorry to be rude, but I just wanted to tell our viewers, listen, this is something that has never been looked at from this lens. What General Rajiv is walking us through today is probably the first time somebody is looking at the concept, the mission, and the vision. And I really request you all, please, to like this video right now so that we have a better attendance for this. I know there's a IPL match going on. That is just a spectacle. And this is what's going to define who you are, especially when you go visiting abroad now. The newfound respect for the Indian citizen, that's very palpable. These are things that we will not, it cannot be achieved overnight. It takes a lot of hard work. And I think India has put in that hard yards. Also, just wanted to expand on a couple of things that General Rajiv said. When he said Brandt, it is Willy Brandt, the Chancellor of Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, not the unified Germany. And he was a fairly visionary man. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail and perhaps on a different hangout. I just wanted to set the context. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So just look at the timelines. China also started feeling left out. And suddenly they start talking of a South-South dialogue. And it makes you laugh that till yesterday you were very loath to call yourself as a global South, and you wanted to equate yourself with US and have a G2 dialogue. And suddenly today you find that you are feeling left out because India is being accepted by the global South, that okay, you be the voice. Because India has never said that I am a power. India has said I am a developing nation. Yes, I am a rising power, but I am part of the global South. And of latest was the Chinese foreign ministry press spokesman talking of, after the Russians had taken out their new foreign policy doctrine of having good relations with the emerging powers, great powers, Russia and India. I think that's a psychological way of trying to tell the South that India is a big power and not the South. And it is not finding takers for his global development initiative and global civilizational initiative. But I would go back a little, take the timeline. Voice of the Global South Summit is held on 12th of January. What happens after that once the world is rattled? Because if you look at it, almost 70% of the world is standing with you. 19th January is when BBC releases the 20-year-old video of Gujarat riots. That doesn't have much traction within India, despite all the paid media and all these liberal people shouting from the rooftops. It didn't find much traction. Then on 23rd Jan comes out Hindenburg report on Adani. Now that flops because Haifa port has been handed over to Adani by Israel, and even Australians have signed their agreements with Adani, and both of them vouched for it. And that forced, I feel, because suddenly you find that the West is in a peculiar situation. To counter a rising China, they need India. They need the markets in India. They need India's support. But they would also prefer a very pliable central government, which they are not finding it in India. And they also realize that if it is the pliable government, then India may not rise as much as what it wants. And so maybe they may continue to be stronger in this century. And that is where you find that suddenly from March onwards, when the Hindenburg report also doesn't gain too much of traction, you find the support starting for the Khalistanis. And it is the Anglo-Saxon area where all this happens. UK, Canada, USA, Australia. New Zealand a little bit, but stays quiet. New Zealand has not been much active in this area, but Australia, Canada, USA, UK. Little bit it happened in Italy, but it was quelled. And that is where all this starts. And you find that in this Ramanavami time, Ilham Omar also making those statements, and you had in some number of places the riots. And the moment the central government read the riot act, all these places now for the Hanuman Jayanti, they had central forces also deployed. Everything became quiet. You also note that Raga, when he went abroad during this period, had all his anti-India rants being, I would say, orchestrated and coordinated by all these people, democracy in threat and whatnot. But end result, today they suddenly find themselves that the opposition itself has distanced itself away from Raga. All these issues, the opposition is slowly distancing away from them, that this is not in the larger interest for themselves and the nation, because the bulk of the people within India are not supporting that thrust. Their major worry today comes from India's growing status, financial status. More than economic is the financial aspect. Your economy is generally stable. There is an increasing acceptance of rupee as a trade. The Vostro accounts coming in. There is a spread of UPI. It impacts directly two things: Visa and MasterCard. They lose a lot of money because they take a lot of commission when it is used at commercial end. But this, they will
2 to 3%, 2.9% is typical. Yeah.
They lose a lot of money. It is a direct threat to their way of life. They have sold to their people to live on credit. A UPI is not on credit. It goes directly from your bank there. So you'll spend only what you have and you won't live beyond your means. So that is where all these narrative wars and everything have started coming in, when they find that if your global south, bulk of the world, accepts your rupee trade, it impacts the dollar directly. So what is left with them is only the petrodollar portion, not the trade portion. And the biggest concern is Saudi Arabia has also applied for opening the Vostro account in India. It's also in the list of the countries who are there who applied. 18 have been given. There are many more. So what will they do next? We have to be very careful about that. But one thing is the problem all through. It is not that this is the first time it is happening. It has happened earlier also. All those times, even when people, you look at the color revolution and all, there is an institution in Boston, Albert Einstein Institution. It teaches 198 ways to overthrow an elected government. All through this, all these color revolutions in the post-Soviet space, Warsaw Pact space, Arab Spring, it was George Soros and his front who were in the background providing all the money. He never came into the forefront. This is the first time I think he's become so desperate. The old man had to come up and openly make statements. And that tells you the desperation in which they are to curb your rise. They wouldn't like to curb your rise. Because when you look at the center of gravity of maritime trade, it used to be in the Indian Ocean, it shifted to the Atlantic, then went away, stayed in Atlantic despite the shift in power towards US, then shifted back to the Pacific, and now it is coming back into the Indian Ocean. And that is their main issue. So I feel there will be many more. They'll work out their narrative wars because this was done very fast. They didn't expect so many countries to come to India. So I'll stop here. Any questions you would like to, or push it in any directions?
Thank you so much, General Rajiv. Again, you've connected dots in a way perhaps we are all not looking at, yet it makes perfect sense. To tell you a little bit about the general rot that has set into the US institutions and bodies, I want to just give our viewers a simple example. California, about 15 years ago or 10 years ago, decided that it will encourage green energy. To that effect, a lot of incentives were given. A lot of us started putting solar panels. Then what happened was there was one summer when there were a lot of forest fires, and these forest fires were actually taking down the PG&E, which is the local gas and electric provider. They were taking, because the electric poles are not made of concrete, but many places they are using just redwood poles to do it. So the charter for PG&E, which is like a 50, 60-year-old institution, was that it would always clear the brush growth around the electricity lines. Now they didn't do that, and nobody caught them on doing that. Their stock kept going up. People kept, feasting on the dividends. PG&E was like a blue chip company, could do nothing wrong, except when these forest fires happened. Since they didn't clear the growth, suddenly the electricity poles started failing. Electricity into many of the remote regions completely went bust. And in order for them to now repair it, they realized they didn't have the money. So you know what PG&E did? They declared bankruptcy. Chapter 11. And suddenly the whole state of California was looking at, are the lights are even going to come on or not? Then the state steps in. PG&E very cleverly puts the blame on the individual retailer, because when you put your own solar power on your roof, you essentially can consume what you are generating, plus whatever excess you have, you can feed it back into the mainstream. So in other words, your meter can at times go backwards. So they had to put smart meters. So essentially what California said, the PG&E said, was that, look, we have to have a way of curbing this, otherwise we'll completely go bust. You can't just have people feeding their excess generation into the grid. Then what are we for? What can we do? So somehow they have managed to convince the California state to allow them to charge the consumer who has the solar panel a fee ahead of time. So in other words, they say that your consumption is $200 a month. Therefore, it's a different matter that you might be putting the energy back into the grid, but we want to get paid for the entire year ahead of time. So on January 1st, rain or shine, whether I use my electricity or not, whether I generate electricity or not, I have to pay the complete amount. And then every month they'll start deducting it. See, the challenge here is that not everybody has this kind of flexibility in their income that they can pay the entire yearly consumption of theirs ahead of time. So these are all games that are going on, and PG&E has still not solved the root problem, which is to make sure that they abide by what their original charter was, to clear the brush, so that it will not repeat. Another summer, another forest fire, same problem is going to happen, perhaps this time even more disastrous. I just question how, even though I am generating electricity, but I'm also being penalized by asking to pay up. What happened, General Rajiv, is one time I missed the payment and they gave me a disconnection notice for not paying the advance payment. It's not what I have consumed. It is what I'm about to consume according to their estimates.
This is what Karl Marx would have called capitalistic gundagardi.
Exactly. So, MasterCard, Visa, many people in the United States, they max out on their cards. And as they max out on their card, what happens is every card will allow you to make a minimum payment. You have a max of 25,000 expenses on a particular card. You can say you can pay $25 a month for that card. That means in your lifetime, you're not going to ever pay the principal. Now, the credit card companies love you. So they'll give you another card so that you can start spending on that card. And pretty soon, $500,000 you have run up on all these cards, but you're living the life of a king because you're only paying a minimum $25 a month. It's a different matter that you're paying it at 18% interest. So who's going to tell the credit card companies that you cannot give somebody who's financially insecure so many cards? Nobody does that. This is capitalism, right? So all these, games are now going to start crashing because UPI gives you a very efficient way to transfer money from place A to place B. That's the hard and soft. Even if you're eliminating 3% per transaction, it starts adding up when you put the zeros. That's what
When
Rajiv was saying.
UPI,
Yeah,
whatever in the UPI transaction, government is paying a certain amount to these. Now they have charged the service provider, I think 1% for the transactions, but whatever is the cost required for the UPI, that is government has been paying. And the worry why I'm saying it is like for example, India and Singapore have a direct deal for UPI. So from my bank, I can transfer to Singapore. Now, when I go to Singapore, like when I went to Singapore, I carried dollars with me to do any business. I don't
right.
need to do it now. From my UPI, from my bank, based on the current value of the Singapore dollar, the amount gets transferred to the service provider.
Yes,
Where's the dollar there? There is no dollar consumption.
right.
That is their biggest worry. That moment all these 120 plus, 140 plus countries start utilizing this, then what happens to the dollar trade? Yes, 60% of it is petrodollar, but the balance 40% is from trade. And if that trade gets hit, then it gets hit badly. And especially this bubble which the MasterCard and Visa have given for their way of life of the people living permanently on credit. When that collapses, then what happens? They already have almost about 31 trillion as debt. So what happens to them? It is not that their economy will collapse, but it will come down plenty of notches. And which is what is worrying, and hence all these narratives and other things, they will keep pushing at India. At the end, I will give you my view of how to counter these narratives on your platform.
Wonderful, sir. I also want to bring to your viewers' attention what is happening with Tesla, the electric vehicle. I think for the fourth or the fifth time, they have reduced prices of many of their lines, especially the lower cost lines. Why? Because they are finding it hard to sell. Why they are finding it hard to sell? Because the federal government is now withdrawing subsidies. See, what used to happen was you got, I think, $10,000 rebate, 7,500 in your federal. When you file your income tax returns, you got a $7,500 rebate if you had an electric vehicle, and you got a $2,500 rebate from the state of like for example, California was giving $2,500, and that was a check that the state gave you. It would take 2-3 months, but you got that check. So $10,000, whatever be your buying price, right from the top, $10,000 got deducted. Now that program is running out because the federal the installed base is quite large. I think 1 in 4 houses now has a solar energy solar roof now, and most of the people bought this so that they could charge their electric cars. Not only that, you have now all the brands now making electric cars, so you don't really have a monopoly. Therefore, Tesla is now having to compete with cars that are like 1/3 or 1/4 the price of their, what I would call premium. See, there is only so much you are going to give for good looks. Toyota cars look good. I'm sorry, Tesla cars look good, no doubt about that. But it's becoming more of a Me Too market. So there's a very interesting dynamic at place. So and we have to see how Elon Musk is going to come out of it. In fact, the profitability of Tesla was not over the sale of its cars, even when they were keeping the prices high. It was because they were getting these carbon benefits. That was what was the one that was giving offsets that they were getting. That was what was giving them the boost, and that is also going to go down once the car sales also goes down. Very interesting dynamics in play. General Rajiv, please continue, sir. Very fascinating
Yeah.
conversation.
On this green energy with the talk of EVs, I have serious reservations on it because EV is okay as long as I have a green, so I have a solar panel. What do I do with the battery 10 years later when it goes? That's a waste, it's not a recyclable waste, the lithium ion battery which you have. How much of environment degradation takes in mining of nickel, cobalt, and lithium when you're wanting your lithium ion battery? That is not factored into it. What is, while I may have put solar panel at my home to charge the battery, when I drive out, because these cars have a limit of 300 miles or
There's a
200,
range. Yeah, yeah.
there's a range. Who charge? How do I charge? And what is the grid? Who is going to, how are you going to cater for this excess grid when more and more people start buying this? How is this excess power going to be generated? So I have always felt that green and your fossil fuel, you need a mature balance between them. Just going green is not going to, because the green itself at the back end and when it finishes its life is very, very, very environmentally degrading. It's not so
You,
easy.
you brought up an interesting point, because I've been looking at this technology, General Rajiv.
So,
On a solar panel, the conversion efficiency is at best 15%, and that 15% you get if you keep your panels clean, meaning like you have to keep washing them,
keep watching.
and only then you get 15%. So I have seats on my roof. I have to pay someone money to go and hose it down. I don't feel, I can't go up there. And so somebody goes and hoses it down, and then for 3-4 months it stays clean. Of course, rains help, but the biggest challenge here is that technology is still kind of 15 to take it from 15% to say 40%. It's going to take a lot of effort. The simplest thing there is 25% of the solar energy striking the panel, it gets reflected right back unused. So you have to figure out a way to at least not reflect back so much, because that itself will give you more energy. So people are trying to do multiplanar solar cells with different angles so that it can absorb it in a different way. So a lot of research is still going on. So that is one side. Go
Battery
ahead.
is the biggest problem.
Battery is a big problem. We have to figure out a way for the lithium ion to be absorbed in a way that is recyclable. I don't know if enough work is being done. And also, I want to answer one question of yours. You said when electric vehicles go for long haul, what happens for their charging? This is the one battle that Tesla won. What they did was very cleverly, they posted these recharging stations at strategic spots along many of the main highways. In US, you have a grid of interstate, right? So that helps. And they only invested in the sunny southern areas. That's the other part.
One issue what Tesla has put is for fast charging.
Yes.
And when you read up on fast charging, it has a direct effect, negative effect on the life of your battery.
So here's
otherwise you have to wait for 8 hours for it to be charged. Now, if you're going for a long drive, are you going to wait every time 8 hours?
Yes.
That's one problem. So I had tweeted to Mr. Gadkari, our Minister for Transport, that why don't we start what is known as battery banks? But it's very difficult for an EV car because the number of batteries are huge. So at least I think South Korea has started for scooters. And here also Ather scooter has their EV, they have started for scooters because they're just 2 batteries. So you put it inside and take the charge. There is an app they give and you pay for it in that app. And they show you which is the nearest place where you can replace your battery. So you take it out and put your charged battery, and you push. And that somebody else will take. So that caters for such things. But for an EV car, it becomes very difficult because the quantum of batteries and it is placed on the floor of the car and it becomes an issue.
So what Tesla has planned, and I don't know if they have put it in play, is that what they wanted to do, especially to take care of what you just said, supercharging, what they had planned to do was all the cars, right from their first model, it's the length and breadth of the car that they have the electric battery panel, and you just boost the car up, you flip a few switches, the old battery comes down, you put a new equivalent battery up, in 5 minutes you can change it and you can be going, just like you would put like gas.
So that is done, and instead of charging station, you have battery replacement stations, then it
Yes,
will
yes,
start working.
yes, yes. See,
Then,
somewhere Tesla has stopped thinking along those lines, and I don't know why. So we have to go back and revisit that. I'll do some research on this, sir, because this is a fascinating topic. EV seemingly good looks good, but it is not. And what about the extra power you are generating at the power plant? You are using coal.
yes.
So that leaves a bigger carbon footprint. Sir, have you traveled in China? Have you traveled in China?
Yes, I have traveled in China, but about 5 years ago.
I see. You would have seen it. I went there last 15 years ago, and I've seen it then. You get in from Hong Kong up like Shenzhen area and start going in. That is where the first big pickup of industrialization took place. You will never see the sun.
No, you don't.
There is no sun. It is just a dull light that is coming through.
I didn't miss Delhi when I went there. It was the same cloud.
So there is massive pollution that has taken place, and even after, see, and it rains a lot there. Like for an hour, it'll rain. You step out after the rain, again back to the same thing. No, the sun never manages to seep through. You never see the sun falling on your skin or anything like that. It's really how much of destruction that has happened in the name of growth is just there. You have to see it to believe it. Anyway, long story short, you are going to come back, and you had some other points to make, sir. I yield the floor back to you.
Yes. My thing is about these narratives. We are always reactive, like what our scriptures talk about when we talk about God, neti, 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 not this, not this, not this. Our biggest problem is that we as a nation, while we talk about our culture, we have not created a foundation for what I term as Bharatiyata. Our ancient name is Bharat, not Hindustan or India. So we have a cycle. We were Bharat. Outsiders came, named us Hindustan, and started ruling. We became Hindustan. The Britishers came and they named us India. And it's time we went back to Bharat. Now, how do you build a narrative? In this multiplicity of kind of cultures and religions and everything you need to have a base, a foundation on which you can build narratives. So, based on our scriptures and modifying it for the present day, the manner in which we are today, I feel we have to codify what do we term as Bharatiya society. What are the societal norms? What is a Bharatiya society? What kind of obligations does a Bharatiya have towards his society? I don't find anybody having any he just looks at after his home and that's it. And with the RWA coming maybe about his a little bit about his society, he's not interested outside. No, that's not a society. A Bharatiya society means not only the obligations of society towards the individual towards the society. You may talk that this education which Macaulay has brought in was bad. Good, okay, fine. So what do you feel that should be the Bharatiya education methodology? What should be the way that you say the capitalism is not good? Good. We have seen the socialism way of life, though Mr. Chidambaram used to call it Hindu rate of growth. I have objections to that because Hindus didn't contribute to that growth. That was a socialism rate of growth. They were hesitant to call it because Indira Gandhi had put it in the constitution, socialism. So that was the socialism rate of growth. So what do you feel is the Bharatiya way of managing your finance, economy, trade, commerce? Codify that. What should be the jurisprudence? When you codify this and after discussions and debates and you bring it in and say this is where it is. Even when you talk of a uniform civil code, it has to be based on this foundation. An acceptable foundation based on which you can do. Thereafter, then you can do whatever. And you can build all your narratives based on that. Once this has been placed there, that this is what India is, this is what Bharat is all about, and this is what it will be, then you will find that for outsiders to build narratives against you becomes very difficult. This is what is missing, I feel. And it takes a little time to set up these norms. These won't happen overnight. Start debating on these issues, start discussions on these issues, and then start putting out these norms. Otherwise, you will have these, like in Haryana, you have the Khap Panchayat and this Panchayat and that Panchayat. Well, society also evolves over a period of time. And the last point I would say is, why we always say that our scriptures have a lot of answers, and yet we hesitate to say that Sanskrit should be the common language pan-India.
Yes, yes.
If you don't have no Sanskrit, how do you read your scriptures? It's not Hindi, I'm sorry. Your scriptures are not in Hindi. Your scriptures are in Sanskrit. So Sanskrit should be pan-India, the common language, the language of connectivity, not Hindi. And you should go for your second language, 2 languages or 3 languages. That is, you study Sanskrit and you will study your mother tongue of your state. Thank you very much. And if I am in Tamil Nadu, why should I not learn everything in Tamil also? Simple. And English is a foreign language, and foreign language is a choice left to the student. What foreign language at a later stage, maybe middle school and higher school, he learns a foreign language, whether it be English or whatever. You go to China, there are very few English speakers. The West learnt Chinese to deal with the Chinese. Similarly, you want to deal with me, you learn Sanskrit and come. That I feel will bring you. And today with digital connectivity and 5G and everything coming up, it becomes very easy. Even if there is one student, through remote, the child can be taught whatever language. So when you achieve this, then you get your full circle from Bharat to Hindustan to India back to Bharat.
Fascinating. I think you're spot on, General Rajiv. And viewers, if you watch, I mean, these days I'm also trying my hand at coming on shows in Hindi, and I tried to speak with the Shuddha Hindi, meaning like I want to try and bring that Sanskrit in a very subtle way, because actually, if you read the book Hindi that at least I learned, it has 80% Sanskrit in it. And even General Rajiv, I'll give you an interesting thing. You know how when you are in high school or middle school, there's a roll call. Interestingly, every class will have a roll call. It's not like in the morning you have a roll call and then in the afternoon you have a roll call when people go to lunch and come back. Every class will have a roll call. 5-10 minutes of waste. Anyway, that's a different matter. But the school where I studied, you did not say you were present. You said upasthit. And this is Hyderabad. This is old city Hyderabad, believe it or not. So there were institutions that made you think more in that direction, what you are suggesting, that even though the Hindi that you are using, there are many flavors of Hindi, and you can use the right flavor because there's underlying, it is arming you with the capacity to understand. See, I can read Sanskrit literature today. If it is not very complicated, I can probably understand 80-90% of it. And so can most of us. The script is Devanagari, so you know that is not a big deal. So a lot of things are there. It is just that intent that is not there.
It is not only that. The IT industry in the West also has stated that the best language for making software and coding is Sanskrit.
Yes.
See, Sanskrit is only a complete language. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll explain why.
Please, go ahead, sir.
All other languages, the word placement of the words decides what the sentence means. Sanskrit is not like that. To some extent, Russian has also been built on that. I learned Russian in NDA. To some extent, Russian has also been learnt like that. The meaning of the sentence will change by the way, the intonation and pronunciation. Like you say, aham gacchami, I am going. Aham gacchami, it means, am I going? I can place gachami aham, wherever. So if you take a Sanskrit sentence, the word can be placed anywhere because there it has been conjugated and the declamation has been done to that word. You place the word anywhere, the meaning of the sentence does not change. It changes only with your intonation and pronunciation.
So true, sir. So
Not any
if
other
I,
language. Not any
yeah,
other language.
so if I understand you correctly, the word is grammatically complete within itself, so
Yes.
that the placement is not an issue after that.
That is why they say all these IT experts say that this is the best language for coding and for making software. That even if you, because the word is complete in itself, you place it wherever, the person will understand what type of coding is supposed to do. He'll not make a mistake.
Right, right. So true, sir. And we have a few questions. Believe it or not, we've been talking for 45 minutes. And fascinating set of questions. Can we have some questions now, please?
Sure, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you. Nitin Jain wants to know, welcome, sir. Never missed any episode of yours on Dev Talks and PGurus. Question: how to fight against the enemy with how to use non-traditional wokeism, fake riots, wrong history, etc. ways to attack Bharat.
Nitin, like I said, what I made the point was you have to create your foundation. Otherwise, you will be reactive and you will say, no, it is not this way, and you will have to do a lot of effort to do that. But if you bring out all your norms, what you say, like whether like BJP says Hindutva, I don't take towards Hindutva because Hindu is a word given by the West and those living on the other side of by the Greeks actually, because they can't pronounce S. Indus was Sindhu, they couldn't pronounce S, so it became Hindu. Okay, we are Bharatiyas. I am a Bharatiya. So I believe in a Bharatiya culture, which is the Sanatan Dharma. There is nothing called Hinduism. It is Sanatan Dharma. It is Bharatiyata. My culture is Bharatiyata. So now, since society is evolved, we have to create our now sit, debate, and create that we have in our scriptures and all these writings, the culture and everything, what are the responsibilities and obligations for everybody. Let's codify it for today. What is it? Let us bring in a scriptures 2.0, wherein the codification is being given. How should you educate? Obviously, those days they used to go off to a Gurukul and it used to be in the middle of the jungle. I can't do that today. But let me modify, bring all the positives out of that and bring it into my education system. What stops me from doing it? Going back to my culture, going back to my roots, my basics. How do you manage your finances, your economy, your trade, your commerce? In what manner? You don't want to go totally capitalism and you don't want to go totally socialism. So you got to make a balance between the two. So what kind of manner will you do this? Similarly, bring in your jurisprudence. Why should I look at the manner in which the West has left behind, which I have tried to improve that. I am saying codified, readjusted and codified based on our culture. What do we feel and how should it be existing today? Once you set these norms and start teaching your children, it takes time, generational shift. After all, for so many years, decades, you have been studying this. Now you start bringing in, and you will find that over a period of time, you become internally very strong because you have a cultural base over which any religion can come in. Religion has got nothing to do with your culture. That is why we were able to absorb so many religions within us. And those people who are there within that have to accept that they are also Bharatiyas and work with that. That's it, period. You will be able to counter all these things. If you don't have that, you will be always reactive. After they do something, you will respond.
And to add to what General Rajiv is saying, look at who is being used to attack India and Sanatana Dharma in the West. Most of them are Indian born, whether it is Tenmori Soundararajan, Ajanta Subramanian, Kshama Sawant. I can go on. There are Sunita Vishwanathan. Every one of them happens to be an Indian American. So why are they doing this? Because they themselves have not had a proper grounding in what General Rajiv is saying as a Bharatiyata. And somehow, for a few pieces of silver, they believe it is fashionable to trash what was their culture and how that culture got mangled and twisted. That part they are completely ignoring. And this is where it is very easy for someone to try and put any narrative they want on anything and say that this is therefore oppressive. Anyway, so this is the root cause, and I think we really need to address this. I believe that the Modi government is doing it. Sir, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, I will just add, before any narrative comes, Nitin, just look out. They base their narrative based on some sort of a report which they will take out. The report is also by these woke liberals outside, most of them Indians. So they will say, look, I am not saying this, your own Indians are saying it. And it is not just outside, it is within India also. They will have their paid people who will be doing it. And they will be only asking them. They will not ask anybody. Nobody is going to ask me. I'm sorry. They won't ask me because I'm not going to do what they want to do. So from there, they build up all their narratives and start it so that. But the problem today, what is happening is the narratives are what they are taking out, the reports are very weak. A narrative is actually, you'd have a fact and you build a fiction around it. And it keeps shifting slightly based on the slight shift in the fact. If your fact itself is wrong, like if you bring in a hunger index and place you below Afghanistan, then I'm sorry, there's something wrong somewhere. Happiness index, you are at the bottom. Even people of Afghanistan and Somalia are happier than you. Then, you have people who are educated in India, number of percentage who are educated are quite high. They start laughing. So that is what I would say. The narratives have to be fact with a fiction woven around it. So with a fact fiction, then it works.
Next question, please. Ishan, thank you. Hello, sir. What are your opinions on the USA using politicians of Indian origin like Ro Khanna to force their agenda and interfere in the internal politics of India?
Like I mentioned, Ishan, a good point you're making. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, maybe you missed it. It's a rising India that is a threat to them. You are now becoming the face, I would say, of the global South, and the global South stands behind you. Global South is almost about 70% of the known countries around the world. And if 70% of the countries look up to you, then what happens to the sole superpower of the world? People won't listen to him. So he has to create these narratives and other things. Even as he needs you, he would prefer a more pliable government which will not do things like this and which would propagate their way of life, which is getting impacted with the rising use of rupee and your UPI, was throw account and UPI. That is their fear. So whatever, be that as it may, any big power, when it feels that somebody else is going to challenge it, is going to do these things. Let us be clear. Olden days used to be 𝙒𝙖𝙦𝙤 trap. They used to fight. In today's globalized world, it is geoeconomics and narratives that will be utilized.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Rahul Rathod. Is it correct to assume that old non-aligned countries are reorganizing as global South and new Cold War is between NATO versus Russia and China? Your thoughts, sir?
No. All the global South or the third world were not part of non-aligned countries. So non-alignment was something very different. You had three places, but even within non-alignment, you were either socialist or you were pro-capitalist. That's a different issue. This global South is very different. This is about 140 plus countries who are least developed, underdeveloped, or developing countries. And they are looking towards you because over the last 3-4 years, what you did to help them through COVID, through this Ukraine war, what you have been doing and still are doing, that is where they feel that there is trust in you. There is China, but China coerces and puts them into a debt trap. It gives loans at commercial rates and puts them into a debt trap. US and the West could not be interested. They say that unless you support us in the war in Ukraine, you will not get anything. India has not done that. India stood up to the US and the West to say that it's your war, it's not our war. So you look after it. And you have done whatever was in your capability and is in your capability. After all, you are still only a developing country. You also have to feed a sizable portion of your masses who are below poverty line, which is being done. So whatever else is left, that is also the wheat and other things are being sent to them. So you look at Afghanistan also. They're standing with you against Pakistan primarily because I'm feeding them. And I'm taking their dry fruits and buying those dry fruits from them as export. So yes, there is very little that is left that they can grow there, but even that you are accepting and saying, okay, give it. So that actually is what you are actually walking the talk of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And what in 2018 Prime Minister Modi had said in Shangri-La Dialogue, Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. Security doesn't mean only uniform. No, food security, education security, people security. It means everything. Pakistan has not accepted our wheat, and look at what is happening. People are getting trampled, women and kids are dying in stampede when wheat is being distributed. So sad. NATO versus Russia and China, I would say it's more US versus Russia and China. EU is feeling the pinch. No wonder EU President and Macron went to China, but I don't think anything much will come out of it.
Next question. I would urge you to pronounce the name, sir. I can't read Cyrillic.
𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙤. Yes,
thank you, sir. I don't see how India can maintain this position as a leader when there is China who's happy to buy existing leaders in the short term only to surreptitiously colonize them.
China's pockets have also become short. Okay, it has overspent. We all look at BRI and think of Xi Jinping. No, it started long ago under Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. People forget Hambantota and Gwadar came into Chinese, was given to the Chinese for making the ports under Hu Jintao, not Xi Jinping. They were going in a very phased approach, step-by-step approach, slowly, not overspending. This champion has come who thinks that he should go down in Chinese history as the person who rejuvenated China. And he has overspent on billions, if not trillions of dollars he has put in out there with no returns. I don't think any country can take such a hit. No wonder since 2012, when he started becoming aggressive, his economy started tumbling. And post-COVID, it's on a steep decline. People should not forget that 30% of Chinese economy GDP is dependent on real estate, and it has collapsed. Can you take a 30% hit? So where is his money today when he is trying to say that he will help out? Is he helping out anybody? He's still trying to squeeze out, like the latest one which he is trying to squeeze space in South Sri Lanka for a radar base.
Yes, we touched upon it a few hours ago. Yes.
Now just look at it. He's coercing them, poor chaps, that okay, you give this. Now, will the global south have faith in him? They don't. They don't trust him. Look at what has happened in Solomon Islands. Anyone in the parliament making an anti-China statement, now they have passed an act forcefully. Anyone making an anti-China statement loses his membership of the parliament. Is that government? Is that democracy? It is not lost on the global south. So India is not being the leader. Being the voice and being the leader are two different things. India has never said that I am the leader of the global south. India said we will be the voice. World listens to us, both sides listen to us. So you tell us what you want. We have G20 presidency. We'll see what we can do for you. So it's a voice, you're voicing.
I don't know where the last hour went. It was most fascinating to listen to the good general, sir. I'm very sure we're going to come back and touch upon these topics again in the near future. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Click on the bell button for notifications. And you really need to think this conversation. You may want to watch it more than once, because there are lots of underlying truths that will emerge when you start listening to it again and again. Because things are happening, things are coming at us at a very rapid pace. And only few of us are able to connect the dots. In my opinion, this is one of the best connection of dots that I have seen in the near future. Thank you so much, General Rajiv, and
Thank
namaskar.
you. Namaskar.